Welcome back to Flickr 1. Who's been in Flickr 1 with me before? Harry has. And you guys both know the answer to this question. Flickr 1 is the party room. Oh, you didn't know here. I'm disappointed. All right, so we have another great session for you here in Flickr 1 at the Acronis Summit, and it is the need for public sector and private regulated industry cyber hygiene. That is a whole paragraph of a title, but I'm sure we're going to find out exactly what that means. And on stage, we have Devin Stevens, John Zanni, and Chris Richardson, and Stacey Wright. And Wright. And they're going to tell us all about it. And your host for this session is John Zanni. John, take it away.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome here. This is a fairly small group, so feel free to interrupt with questions during, but we can also do them at the end. So one of the growth areas for a lot of MSPs is into the public sector, state and local government, federal, education, healthcare, nonprofit sector. What's interesting about what's going on in that sector is that two things. One, they are a target of attack. Two, they're getting attacked more and more and being shut down. So schools, K through 12. The number of CIOs I've talked to said, I'm just a K through 12. Why would anybody attack? Next thing you know, school starts, ransomware hits, all the students get to go home for 3 days, right?
Or longer, or much longer.
Or longer, right. And so this is an opportunity for MSPs to go there and help them. Now, the thing that's really interesting that's happening is the insurance agencies and the federal government are getting very tired of bailing them out when they don't have the proper cyber hygiene in place. And so what we're here today to do is really talk about that and show how we can think about helping these groups. Coincidentally, Acronis SCS will have a service next month that can help in the context that it's like Acronis Cyber Protect, but certified. So with that, we'll start right away with the first question, and I'm going to use my notes here because I have a horrible memory, and it's the second day of the event. Cyber criminals have more tools, more skills, and time to continue to attack and their ability to breach systems. What does that mean? That means that this is not your hacker in a dorm that's just playing around because he's bored and doesn't want to study for his or her test. It's nation states, organized crime, groups with a lot of funding, a lot of patience. Their ransomware organizations have CIOs. They talk about ROI. They run it like a business. They have a channel program. They even will give you variants of ransomware so that you can have your own style and you can buy lists from them. This is how sophisticated they are. So the question is, to each of you to start, how is your organization or how are you continuing to modify your tools, processes, and skills to protect your clients or the people you're working with? Yeah. Maybe we'll start with you, Devin.
Absolutely. So our tool sets, and just kind of what we do, we work a lot with local government and county government. And our tool sets are kind of designed to take that small little IT shop and basically boost them up to the point where they can actually manage and be able to maintain that environment with a smaller tool set. And as part of that, as a service provider, you're giving them a second set of eyes. You're giving them that first tier of support that you can basically boost them into a larger IT group just by providing service. So
good. Maybe Stacey, how are you seeing this? You're coming from a different angle, right?
Very different.
And so what's your perspective?
Okay, so first, my angle. I came from MSI the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, nonprofit helping state and local governments. And right now I work at the Cybercrime Support Network, a nonprofit helping small businesses. So from that angle, what we found is, in both cases, it's a matter of tailoring everything so that we're not asking that K through 12 to figure out what they have to do on their own. It's a matter of having a series of steps and progressions, a 12-step plan, if you will, that they can start with something and they know what the next step is, but it's not this overwhelming NIST cybersecurity framework that they have to work from or anything like that. And I would just like to say one of the most popular attacks against K through 12s is DDoS attacks. And it's your kids at home who don't want to take standardized testing because they are actually paying to get DDoSes against their school.
Everyone's picking on K-12, which is ironic. If you see my title, I'm technically employed at Arizona State University, but in unique ways that ASU operates, I'm actually not working there. I'm currently the CIO of the Arizona Department of Education. So I know a little bit. I've only been there 3 months. And so to answer the question about tools and what we're trying to accomplish, ASU, culture of security embedded. We started to embed the security frameworks directly into our cloud platform. We built it on our CI/CD because I got sick of waiting for security to bless us at the end of the project. I said, no way. Let's just get an understanding of what we need to do and let's put it into the code so every time we release, we know exactly it's common. Flash forward, Arizona Department of Education. We're not building our own solutions. We're kind of providing guidance to the K-12 community around. We have over 700 individual agencies, 200 districts, 500 charter schools, networks of charter schools, serving 1.1 million kids. And so the thing that I saw as an opportunity when I joined the Department of Education is how do we create the way to raise the bar of technology understanding, technology capabilities, how do we secure this stuff? So we got a lot of work to do. But we just got $1 million in ESSER CARES Act funding to create an agency that I'm spinning up, that we're now engaging all the superintendents of each county, all their IT teams. We're assessing where they are. And back to the question, how do you secure this stuff? To your point, 250,000 of our school-age children don't have broadband at home. Even if they do, when we get that out there, they're now introducing a new vector of risk that we have to figure out. So there's just so much opportunity. And as I talked to a bunch of folks last night over dinner, like you guys are in a great place where you can start to kind of navigate how you get in, how you kind of use the best tools, how you educate, because they don't know, especially K-12. They don't know. Like most of them don't even have a CISO. And if they have security experts, they can't keep them because they can't keep up with the pay. So there's just a lot in that question. So it's going to be fun to see kind of how we navigate this panel.
You know, one of the reasons I had that example is you remember Flagstaff got hit about a year and a half ago. And
very prominent.
Yeah, and we called them up and said, I even offered to give it for free, which turns out government agencies really don't like free software for, now that I think about it, pretty obvious reasons. But they told me exactly that. They said, we know we need it, but we don't have a CISO or somebody who would actually know what to buy, so we need to hire that person first, then we need the budget, then we'll get back to you. And,
2 years later, have they gotten back to you yet?
Not yet. And I was nicer. I didn't say, well, yes, I'll tell the ransomware guys, you know, leave them alone.
Off for a little while.
They're defenseless right now. That would be just rude to go after it. But that's a common theme I've seen. There is just the lack of resources. There was a city, Lindy, where did we go? That one little town of 3,000. Where?
Globe.
Globe? Globe.
Globe, Arizona.
Yeah, where the IT manager for the city was also the warden for 2 prisons.
You might have the
about right.
The superintendent may actually be the head of IT.
Yeah.
I've seen that in some of our engagement. Imagine that.
Yep.
Okay, I've seen the head of IT actually be the janitor.
Yes.
In fairness.
No, they said the same thing. Yeah.
So you got to imagine though, that janitor. So say he's a superintendent of a has a high school sitting there, and you got 1,000 kids that are at that high school, small little high school. You just went through COVID. That means that your perimeter just got extended by 1,000 endpoints. That you don't control the networks that they're in, and that's that guy's job is to secure that entire thing.
Yep.
It's
And
impossible.
clean the floors.
Yeah, and clean.
And yeah. I think it gets more complex than that in a lot of ways because you're dealing with public agencies. So as you're talking about it, you're not just waiting on them to hire a CISO. I've talked to a local government CISO who got attacked, And he came back and said, well, really great news. Our city council just approved us to move off Windows XP. What do you do with that? We're already end of life at this point. There is nothing you can do. And he still had to get city council approval to go forward beyond that.
Yep, it's actually a big problem. Fortunately, both Parent Acronis and us, we support unsupported operating systems. And Windows XP is not too bad. I won't name the agency, but one of them still uses Windows 3.1.1.
Wow.
So,
Okay, I know a 911 center using DOS, so
yeah, there you go.
That might be more secure than Windows 3.1.1.
at this point it might be.
Let me just jump in with a question. So when you're dealing with the Department of Education for an entire state, what are they doing to really, I mean, it sounds like you're just having a bunch of conversations. Why don't you do some purchasing power and
That's exactly what we're planning to do.
ELAs? Because, I mean, these K-12s, like, they don't have the negotiating power, the
No.
understanding, decision-making to, I mean,
So we're in the early days. The question, if you couldn't hear it, is how at the state of education for Arizona, how are we trying to pool purchasing and change the trajectory? That's exactly it. So the resources that I went after aren't the technical resources to be the expert to deliver, to get a service and deliver it. We're getting resources that are more contract management, federal funding expertise, and then the policy side, because we're in a need to go back to your point. We go to legislature to get funds. We want to incentivize the right behavior, and we come out with maybe we leverage a state of Arizona Department of Administration contract or our Homeland Security contracts, because we've already procured at scale. Imagine now if we could take what was meant for internal state agencies, but plug it out to the K-12 networks too. So you're right. I mean, that's how I'm approaching it. Is how do we leverage our scale? How do we leverage technology in unique ways? Because then we can bypass the need that they each need their own CISO or they each need their own IT specialty teams. So.
And I can tell you that's a common model in state governments where the state government uses their purchasing power, gets some of the local governments on board, and makes it so much easier.
Who's doing it well, though? Do you know groups? I have a
Iowa.
podcast, and we had the state of Texas on. Seems like they've got some interesting. So Iowa?
Yeah.
I would look at Iowa. New Jersey has got a really good model. Michigan, Wisconsin, California. There are quite a few places that have some models. I don't know if they're all still active at this point, but I saw them work and push out cybersecurity products in a way that everybody could work as a group and implement together.
Yeah.
Now, Arizona, we operate like individualized. So that's one thing you all can do with your customers is help them bridge to pool demand and help them navigate each other because they're just doing it individually. And it's
I mean, historically, when we talk about Texas, so Texas, from the contracts world, they have the best of the contract vehicles, the DIR. It's great for 1990.
Right.
You're laughing, but Arizona is behind them. So when you're talking like that's a great contract vehicle, they go through the approval process. They feel like they're getting some sort of negotiating, like, oh, these SKUs have been approved, et cetera, but that's not what we're talking about. What I'm talking about is an ELA where it's a consumption-based model where you're the state of California and you go, we're the ones who established this. So if you're a K-12 group, you can go and say, I want a Cronus for all of my workstations. And the purchasing power of the entire state, all of SLED, et cetera, can purchase it through this platform. And I can get it for, 90% off list or 95% off list, and then they roll that money, they pay you because you're the one. You're talking contract vehicles, and you're talking old clunky contract vehicles. I mean, obviously the state of Texas is gigantic, and
well, that's why I asked the question: who's doing it well? Because I don't see it out there. Utah seems to have some okay stuff on their network,
No.
but
Sorry, I have seen people doing it well. I wouldn't say nobody's doing well. I think the difference is nobody is publicizing they're doing it. You have to be in the SLTT government space to know what's really happening.
Yeah. We just got back from a North Carolina trade show and talking to local and county government. And one of the things that I saw while I was there was there were these guys walking around with these T-shirts that said IT Strike Team. And this isn't a contract vehicle. but it's probably the most grassroots and the best way that I've seen that these agencies, including K through 12s, can work together. And that is, you have a county that has a huge budget for cybersecurity, and then you've got this small little county that has nothing, right? This IT strike team gives them the ability to, during a ransomware attack or a DDoS attack, whatever they're looking at, they can call upon the IT strike team, and all of the counties turn all of their resources towards forensics and recovery for that one county. So they're all working together in a grassroots way to kind of pool those resources and be able to work together. That's probably the best way that I've seen it.
Michigan does it too. Michigan had one of the first in the country. Wisconsin has one of the strongest programs like that. The North Carolina guys are really good.
They are.
That is a model we are seeing come out in most states where there is a team, a task force that is working together. They are behind the scenes sharing information, sharing indicators, and all other types of information. I know of a couple of these task forces that share threat intelligence programs, that are sharing training programs. A couple of them even got FEMA funding to buy the training programs.
Yeah, that's so. Yavapai County is probably our best consortium-oriented. They're in Prescott, Arizona. I think there's 22 districts as part of that county. They pooled their demand to kind of solve that broadband delivery. They got $20 million of their own county CARES Act funds, and they got the vendor community to supply another $10 million. So it is happening. It's just not. I see what you say. It's kind of outdated.
It's not top down. You're going, okay, let's spend $1 million administrative cycles
Right.
to do this pooling. When if you go to the
We have 1.1 million families, right?
Right, yeah, you got a lot of people. So my thought is, when you go to these software manufacturers and go, listen, like we want an ELA. They're selling air here, folks. I mean, software costs nothing. So if you go to them, and
Wait a
say,
second, John's
John's like, hold on.
I get the data center
he was
bill.
going to give away free.
Yeah, watch it.
the licensing is
I have a lifestyle to maintain, you know.
With another question.
We have a question there, and then we'll go to the next big question. Yes.
Thanks. I was listening to the conversation, and I couldn't help but wonder. You know, I've been working with the public sector for a while, and the biggest difference between federal and state and municipality, at least in my area of the woods, which is Washington, D.C., is that the number of rule books and procurement officers you have to ask before you do anything doubles as you get bigger. But one truism that I have noticed, and I would be interested in your thoughts on this, is that by and large, the school systems and the counties and the state sort of have this, how do I put this, agreement to not interfere with each other. Maybe that's the best word. But there's politically a firewall there that when it is breached, ugly things tend to happen. And so I'm just sort of curious. I understand your comment about wouldn't it just make sense to have one ELA, but I have watched so many of them burn down under the load of, did you just try to tell me what to do?
The politics, yeah.
The politics that is undone. And I have noticed that the engineering level, who just is tired of the noise and how long it takes to get something approved, is much more apt to build bridges and do things very on the QT. But would never, like, I had this idea years ago that wouldn't it be cool, there are all these facilities, why don't you just back each other up? Like, why are people setting up their own DR sites? I mean, you have all of these counties, they could be, their production could be somebody else's DR, or the school system in the county could be the DR of the county and so forth. And wow, like, that didn't go well. Like,
Yeah, so
just
if I
the
hear
politics
correctly,
weight of it.
how do you navigate that? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
or,
and do you think
or is it
that-
real? It's real. I mean,
that's real.
I worked for 12 years at Honeywell, Fortune 70 company, and saw, I had 10 jobs in 12 years, and there was a ton of bureaucracy there. And here it's a publicly traded company with a hard-charging CEO, and then I've been at Arizona State now 6 years, and when I first joined, we were ranked, the first time this rankings ever happened by U.S. News and World Report, as #1 in innovation. We now 7 years in a row have won that. And it was, I went in there and I just didn't accept when procurement would tell me, or no offense to this group, security would tell me you can't do that. I'd be like, why? Where is, what? Well, if I did it this way to get that result, would that satisfy? Yes. So I go and do it that way. Then once it's done, I don't ask. Like, we were connecting first, as far as I know, Intel was a sponsor, and they donated some hardware in our stadium. As far as they say, we're the only stadium in the world that has a sound game that's real. It's based on networked, we networked the locations. And when you cheer, we can tell you which part of the stadium wins the loudness. But getting that IoT approved was the most brutal process. And I said, but I knew we were going to do it hundreds of other areas. I said, but if we solve this, it's the same thing. They said, yeah. So now we don't have to do that again. At Department of Education, I have to kind of figure the lay of the land out. It is interesting now that, I inherited this beast of a program, $6 million, 3-year. I had to go to the legislature. I had to go in front of our Senate and the House of Reps, and I thought I was going to get put on stage in one of these things and have to. I'm like, no, it's a formality. But those things are real. So I'm just figuring out how to kind of navigate. But to your question, if you can do it, the response we're getting as we're engaging the community, they know they can't keep operating the same way. So I'm not creating something and telling them they have to do it. I'm creating a community of practice, of an interest that knows that IT needs to be different. Yeah. And we're just starting with that. And so we're assessing, we're surveying, we're finding where our opportunities are. And we hope to take, like an example, Yavapai County, and maybe have 3 counties involved the next time. Mm-hmm. And then the next year, maybe get 2 more. And then we can go back to like Maricopa County that has all the power because the Phoenix Valley is there. That's where all the people are. We can even cut their costs. That's kind of how we're approaching it. But I mean, this is a multi-year initiative, and you got to think big and start small.
Yeah, and the good thing that kind of feeds into that is that I think we're facing a crisis that these guys have never seen before.
No. Cool.
And they're scared. And what that does is it generates conversation with their peers. And so you're starting to see some of that bureaucracy, those political divides that used to be impenetrable between the counties and the states. And unless it came from top down, we're not doing it that way.
Even within the county, between the schools, they won't even talk.
Yeah. So you're starting to see that wear away simply because people know now, like, we've got to universally do something and present a united effort in order to do anything about it.
And again, if you can help that conversation with the relationships you have, you come out looking like the winner, right?
So let's jump on to another question. Frameworks. So you have NIST framework, you have CMMC that's coming, you have, there's a list of them. And they seem to be evolving and changing every day. So are these frameworks actually keeping up with what's needed? And how are you approaching them or helping your customers, or in a case where you are the customers, helping meet the requirements of these frameworks? We can start with Devin.
Okay.
It's the disadvantage of being
right next to him, yeah. So I would say your compliance baselines like NIST and CIS, those are what I just said, they're baselines, right? Whenever you go into a company and you start talking about, okay, what are the compliances that we need to meet? What are the things that we're doing? Really what you're talking about is like, okay, we're gonna get you here, and then where do you go past this? Because they're a baseline. They don't change fast. CIS changes a little bit faster. NIST doesn't change fast. So it's up to us as sysadmins, as engineers, as security professionals to stay ahead of NIST. And the only way that you can do that is kind of what we've been talking about this whole time, is by talking to people, by talking like this, sitting in a room, sitting on a phone, sitting on a Zoom meeting, whatever you got to do to be able to get an idea of what that next attack is going to be and what I can do to stay ahead of what they're doing.
Okay. Stacey, how are you hearing people react when they hear about frameworks and compliance and all of that good stuff?
A lot of eye rolling, to be honest. The thing I like that's coming out of NIST, out of CIS controls, is we're reaching the stage where it's becoming more granular. For so many years, we had that cybersecurity framework, and we were all supposed to follow, and if I had trouble sleeping, I started reading it. It was a long document, and if you had no experience in cybersecurity, you were never getting through it. I like now that we're seeing the ransomware risk management paper come out. We've seen details on supply chain come out. We're seeing all kinds of things like crosswalking between NERC SIP and the CSF. So I like that we're starting to see that it's no longer a competition so much as we work together and we can figure out that, okay, your compliance is here and my compliance is here. In this case, we're going to follow mine, but you accept that. And in the other case, it's the reverse, and I'll accept your compliance. So I think we're starting to see a progress towards a more inclusive environment where everybody can work together so we don't have 20 different compliance drivers you have to follow.
Okay.
I'll tease something out of that is kind of my pet peeve, is regardless of the framework or regardless of the language, if you're seeing people use that as a barrier, that's what I don't like. Because a lot of times security people will keep their language security specific and they'll kind of hide behind that they're the expert, and it kind of creates this reinforcement. And so going back to the example I used earlier, where we embedded the framework into our platform delivery, that was transformational because we brought the security team, we brought the IT team, we even brought the product teams together to co-create, and that hadn't been done before. They hid behind their processes, they hid behind the framework, and we're like, well, okay, you just sent us a 400-page document. What do you want us to do with it? And so by teasing it apart and figuring it out and kind of coming to a common understanding, it changed the game. And now things are automated and they're understood. And so to me, that's how I look at those things. I'm not going to go figure out which framework to do. I want to hire people that are going to keep learning. That's another thing to pick up. As long as they're staying ahead of their game and they're, culture of curiosity and they're learning and they're empowered to embed the right ones, I'll let the right people pick the thing. I don't pick between them.
And to add to that, Chris, one item for the MSPs here to be aware of is you need to validate if you're working with a vendor or someone that they actually are compliant. So an example, I think it was about 2 years ago, there were 40 doctor offices that were compromised through ransomware through an MSP. Some of them never opened shop again. And I went to that MSP site to just see who they are because that's who I am. And right there, top banner, anti-ransomware solution. They had just lied about it, right? They put it there, they said they were secure, and their solution did not include anti-ransomware.
Third-party checking, because I'm sure SolarWinds was compliant, right?
Yeah. Right, yeah, so it's
not
important.
the update server.
Was it Abraham Lincoln who said, trust everything you read on the internet?
Yeah, that's right.
It's not zero trust, it's always
It's
trust.
trust.
Well, so
yes.
like in our case, because we have a number of certifications, we link to all of them. And then there are items where you're self-certified. In that case, we publish the controls. And if we can find a third-party vendor that can audit us, now I know it's not the same as a certificate, but at least we could say, hey, look, this guy who's trusted, usually worked for the government at some point in the past, came in, audited us, and says we're okay. Even with VPAT, right, the American Disabilities Act, that's self-certified or self-assessed. We paid, I think it's like $25,000 for somebody to come in and just test our product to document it. So that way I have something to say, don't trust me, because I've never lied to you before, but still, don't trust me, trust them. And it makes a big difference. Sure. So I love this question here. And pick two, people, process, or technology. A lot of forces at play for cyber hygiene, protecting yourself, shortage of cybersecurity experts. I think it's 600,000 open positions here in the United States alone. And then machine intelligence is now a commodity, which means that anyone can use it. So for this year and next year, where are you focused on? People, which of the two are you focused on? People, process, or technology? And I'll start with Stacey this time.
Okay, I'm going to pick one. I am a rebel and go with people. So people may know the process, the technology can be in place, but if you read the Verizon DBIR, you know that phishing links and other things are the way actors are getting in. Now with work from home and RDP and please secure port 3389, the whole idea is people can be more vulnerable. But what we're also starting to see is cybersecurity has to be holistic. We want a culture where people feel comfortable coming to you and saying, hey, I clicked on that link. Don't investigate me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, but I clicked on it. I want them to tell me that so I can respond faster. I want to take this to the next level as well and help them. Yeah, maybe I have to give them more training or something like that, but if I click on a link and put ransomware on my company's network and take the entire company down for a day or a week or a month and they can barely recover, that's an emotional trauma. It's not just the financial trauma to the company. There is a true emotional trauma to the idea of you helped somebody destroy your company. So to me, part of the people is looking at cybersecurity more than just the processes and technologies, but to people as a whole and all the emotions and other effects that are involved.
Okay.
And people are always going to be our most dangerous point, right?
Yep.
They're the only actors in the environment. A computer can sit there plugged in and never do anything, and it's fine. People are the ones that start to cause our vulnerability.
Do you look at, if you had to pick a second one, what would it be?
Process.
Process?
100%. So a checklist. I mean, we're talking about cyber hygiene, right?
Right.
So what's hygiene? You get up in the morning, you take a shower, you brush your teeth, you put on your deodorant. And the same things that we do, that's a checklist. Now, it's ingrained in us because we've been doing it our entire life. But there are things that we have to do every day that we go into as a service provider and we start checking backups for customers, or as we're an end user, a customer, and we go into our environment and we say, okay, today, what makes my environment secure? That's a checklist. Are my backups good? Do I have AV deployed everywhere? Process gets forgotten because process is boring. But as long as you have a good process and you have an easily followed process, I think we're better off. So that's a big thing for us, is how do we communicate good processes and good hygiene standards to our end users and to our customers in the next year.
Any thoughts, Chris?
Well, I worked at Honeywell for a long time, very process-oriented. Six Sigma is part of standard operating. You have to be trained within the first year. People doesn't happen without people. And then if you're aligned, the tech just comes along and you can make the right solution. Right. I would just add to this, though, where I've been focused on a lot lately as I've evolved in my leadership, it's the mindset. You've heard a couple things. There's 3 C's: culture, collaboration, and communication. You said if you can get the right message to the right people to do the right thing. You mentioned vulnerability. If you're not collaborating, you don't have the people engaged in the right way where they feel comfortable to do the right thing, it won't happen. And that all comes back to culture. So that's kind of how I look at it. Those things go across all 3 of those areas. But if I have to pick 2, probably people and process as well.
I can tell you, so I'm used a lot in phishing attacks. Apparently, I want a lot of Google gift cards. and what I've done, but it's taken a long time to get my team to understand this. As I said, if I ever ask you for anything, specifically money, there is no problem you messaging me or calling me and saying, John, was that you? And people are intimidated, right? John asked me for, 100 Google gift cards. Literally, they do. Or everyone's W-2, and he's the CEO. I'm afraid to go ask him if it was really him. Because I've repeated it over and over again, and when something happens, I communicate it out, thank the person for telling them, also remind them that if I'm going to ask you for money, I'll do it in person, right? Yep. I'll get you a little drunk first.
And it won't be documented.
Yeah, it won't be documented. And it does help. And look, the last phishing attack, it was through text messaging, and it was from a number out of Nebraska. So if you're trained, you just look and go, okay, I don't think John lives in Nebraska. As a matter of fact, I've never been in Nebraska. So that would be pretty obvious. And the good thing is, because people asked, there was another phishing attack actually this weekend. This time, apparently, I'm in New York. And I had a couple people go, hey, John, we got one again. It's from you. I go, sorry about that. And that was good. But that people part is important. Yeah. The other thing I would add is process is a tricky one. You'll get asked, I need to be compliant. What's the tool I can buy from you and I'm done? And unfortunately, automation and tools can reduce the need for process in people, but it cannot eliminate it. It just can't, right? You need the checks and balances. You need the compliance people. I think it was you who said, bringing on board people that take care of it. The reason Acronis SCS exists is we built compliance services that will stay compliant. And that's all we do. I have a bigger security team than Acronis does just because I'm focused on all these controls that target more, let's call it niche areas and more sensitive areas. But that's all we do. That way we keep on top of it. We make sure you don't have to worry if an auditor comes in or something
And
like
to your
that.
point, the people doesn't have to be the people in your organization or your team. It is your network of who you work with. Back to the whole engaging the state, like we'll bring in the best partners because we want to serve in the right way. And so just be creative in who the people are, and the other things follow.
Okay. So we'll start with you, Chris. How about your incident response plan? Has it changed compared to the year before? And are you seeing changes in government requirements that you have to take into account?
Well, oddly you say that. In July, day 3 on the job, our entire network goes down because of a tie to a physical asset in a data center that we were moving away from anyways. So I got to learn what our Department of Education critical response was under fire.
Live disaster testing. I like it.
In the process, we found out it was documented 8 years ago and hadn't been updated, and no one had been actively checking it. So luckily, I ran global incident management for Honeywell, so I knew a thing or two about these types of things. But I don't know, I'm just kind of reliving it. It's giving me a little PTSD. But what do I add on this? So clearly, it wasn't documented well. B, it hadn't been updated. People hadn't used it to operate it. And oh, by the way, 8 years ago, we know that the security risk has changed a lot. And so we had an offsite, and this was literally one of the 5 key areas that we focused on. And now we've embedded it where our, not just IT communications team, but our Chief of Staff's communications team understands their role. Our CFO understands kind of the investments that he's made in the past, and kind of we're prepping him for some stuff that we'll probably need to make happen and figuring that out. But again, it goes back to the collaboration and communication. If you haven't documented it and you've done it in a silo, you're going to be in some trouble when it happens. So I guess those are my themes. It's got to be there. People have to understand it. It has to become practical, kind of like your brushing the teeth analogy. So these tabletop exercises are great, but you have to communicate why it's important, and during it is not the time to be communicating why it's important. I'll share that.
And it has to be tested too.
Right.
You can't just set it in stone
No.
and leave it there. You have to practice it continually, and you get better.
Well, the great thing is our partners start coming up with some scenarios of their own because we're including them, and that's exciting because we're educating each other along the way.
Yeah. Why'd you do it this way? Why don't you do it this way? Our product does this,
Or have you thought about this part in an incident? Because IT looks at it from one angle. It was interesting. The next week, we actually had an entire grid. You guys think we're in Wild West or something, but power went out during our superintendent's team meeting, and I'm like, did we blow something up again, guys? Like, what's going on? Like, and literally, she's like, you've had the roughest week. This was on Friday of my first week. But no, it was 6 blocks.
So my turn to tease out. You mentioned other people, communications, chief of staff. That's when the changes I'm seeing is cyber incident response plans are no longer just about the IT team. You have to have your chief of staff, your communications team on board and already familiar with what ransomware is and how to respond.
And they want to know. They want to know.
They do,
too.
because they're going to get the questions. They're going to have to deal with the employees who now can't work for a week, or the newspaper calling, or whatever. And it's going to happen. So if you bring them on board in the first place and let them help you draft the response, you get that immediate buy-in from them. And then they're more prepared and they're not standing at your desk covering when you need to be doing something else.
Yep. And from the service provider side, I'll give you a piece of advice. If you're not already helping your customers build out DR runbooks and disaster recovery plans, it's going
Missing
to
an
boost
opportunity.
your onboarding.
Yeah. Missing an opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an impressive, the amount of response that we got when we first started doing that, it was amazing.
And
there'd be great-
specific ones,
Yeah,
like ransomware, BEC, not just a general, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, good. Ditto what they said. We update our incident response plan constantly, and simple things like what happens if John gets hit by a bus on the way out of the Fontainebleau? How does the business continue to run? And these are things you need to think about and plan, right? So it's people, once again, people, process, and tools to make sure that if something bad happens, you have a way to recover quickly. And it's harder when you learn trial by fire. I remember the previous company, not Microsoft, zero-day attack, and we didn't have an incident response plan, and we scrambled for that. And we were a technology provider at the time, and it wasn't even our technology; it was in the operating system. But we're still the guys who got called. You have to be careful. Yeah. So there's been an interesting phenomenon happening in the public sector, at least what I've seen, is up until pre-COVID, even in state and local healthcare, nonprofit, everyone wanted to buy perpetual licenses. Selling subscription was just a non-starter. They wanted to buy the product, own it, would pay you maintenance because they had to by law, but that's just the way they wanted to purchase. Since COVID, that has changed completely. Like, we're selling more subscription services than perpetual services. And part of it, I believe, is that the IT budgets are spread so thin now for states, municipalities, local governments, because they had to deal with COVID and all their employees being remote, that it's forced them to this model. Great for us, by the way. But and so has this forced organizations to modernize their approach? Like, how has it impacted their approach to cyber hygiene?
So I'm going to go back to a conversation I had just a little while ago with this gentleman, and that was basically you have to evaluate in this world that we live in. You have to evaluate your security products constantly. So if you go and let's just say cable, right? Cable TV. When you subscribe to cable TV, you're not buying a cable company because you don't know, next year you might want to look at the next cable company, maybe go to a different service because it offers better channels. Your security systems, all software is like that. So if you're going subscription, you have the chance to evaluate at the end of that contract and say, this is the product I want to do, or this is the product I want to do. You know, what's changed? Where do I want to go? And I think we're seeing a lot more flexibility in terms of that.
Any thoughts on?
I'll throw out, we know SLTTs lost 10% of their budget. On average, across the board, cybersecurity budgets were cut by 10%. All local government and state government budgets were cut by 10%. But the costs have skyrocketed. So I think part of what we're seeing is that shift, not just try it out, look for the best deal, but also hesitancy because we don't know what's next year is going to look like.
Happen.
We don't know how we're going to get there or what we may need. As far as we know, our mayor may say, everybody back to the office, and now the work from home environment's gone. But it could also be that, okay, everybody worked from home except for police and fire. You're not allowed to.
Yeah, as I hear the question, I just think through, again, it's back to that people, process, technology question. If you're not working with a SaaS company that has the whole enchilada, where they're focused on their SaaS platform as a product. They've got people that are embedding the tech and to fit your needs, as well as the security into their solutions. Then you're in with the wrong partners. I know Salesforce at Arizona State University, we're the world's largest deploy of a Salesforce platform for higher education. And so I know quite a bit about what they're doing, and they invite us as a customer to see, so we see it firsthand. But Department of Education, we're in a totally different world there, and then with our K-12 schools, even less so. So the SaaS gives the flexibility to change your cost structure, but it's now impacting us. Our program areas, they get upset if our costs go up even incrementally, but SaaS providers, you're in a great spot, can just kind of put the squeeze on you and start raising the rates, and it's amazing how that impacts there. So a lot in that question. In the intent of the question, though, is that what's changing on the security side? It's just you just want the best SaaS partners that are investing in their product in ways that is going to keep you from having the incident. That's tough to find. Like I was joking with SolarWinds, everyone thought they're the world leader and that they were bulletproof, and clearly there's ways in. So.
My father used to tell me, he goes, look, it's not about if you go to the hospital, it's about when you go to the hospital. And breaches happen, right?
Yeah.
We just have to admit it, that sometimes bad things happen. And if you have the right incident response plan, you're transparent, you can minimize the damage and recover fast. I mean, we have 4 different networks within our company, just because that way, if we get a breach, they really have access to a very limited amount of data. I do not have access to the code, for example, or the data center, because why would I need it? I'm the CEO. I'll do stupid things.
That is an amazing benefit of how technology's changed.
Yeah.
That things are compartmentalized, and the damage can be controlled, as well as when you have all these partners, the tools to see what is causing it are so different than the monitoring tools of the past. So, good point.
Yeah. So we have about 10 minutes. I have questions, but any questions from the audience?
And if you have a question, let me know. I'll bring you the mic. And I want to just say first, so Devin, so it's shower, toothbrush, and then
I think
deodorant.
you got it, Jeff. I think you got it.
All right.
I walked by you earlier. You're
I've been
fine.
doing it wrong
Yeah,
for
I know.
years. I've been doing this just wrong, evidently. Does anybody have a question for the panel?
That means we did a good job, right?
Yeah, that's it. Well,
We're scary.
I'm not done yet. We'll start with Stacey and work our way here. What keeps you up at night in the context of cyber hygiene and public sector or industry? Because we actually sell a lot into manufacturing and others as well.
So a little less about cyber hygiene, a little bit more about public sector in general. The release of the information. So we see police departments that have evidence modified and being released. We see 911 centers losing their data. These are not good things. I mean, these are life safety issues where people can truly die. What worries me is that the information isn't just going to be openly released, but that information is going to be modified. Because if we can't trust the amount of chlorine going into our water or some other chemical into our water, that becomes a really scary nightmare situation for me.
For me, again, it's pretty similar with how I've been responding. What keeps me up at night is the wrong person leaving the organization. Because when you have the right people that fit your culture, that are ambassadors of the culture, that are generative and adding value, and their collaboration and they're good communicators, you lose those people. And we know, like you see this great reshuffling or whatever they're calling it, there's a lot of options out there. And that can take some time to get a good fit. So that's what keeps me up at night.
So for me, today the FBI rated the offices of PACS. They're a point of sale system, and they are basically saying that they believe that the PACS point of sale stuff have been used in cyber attacks on local and federal government. So that's a state-sponsored thing, and that keeps me up at night. Because we're not going up, like you started the whole conversation, John, we're not going up against a script kiddie sitting in his dorm. These are governments that want to embarrass or make money off us. These are the mafia. They're organized
IP.
crime. It's a business. And that's hard to defend against by yourself, right? So yeah, that keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
I'll answer as well. I just worry that bad news doesn't travel fast enough.
Yeah.
Right? And I was talking to a CIO of one of the states, and he said one of the reasons they don't get funding for cybersecurity, cyber protection, is because they don't report incidences. So the people with the money who fund these efforts say, well, I don't know of any problem, so why should I give you money? And that's because they didn't report it, and they just like put it under the rug. So it's a really scary thought. As MSPs and distributors of MSPs, this is an opportunity to really help solve that problem, and why we're focused on that. With that, I think I'm going to give each.
Sorry, can I throw in something?
Sure,
If you're not
absolutely.
tracking this, there is a cybercrime reporting metrics bill in the legislature right now. I think it's in the House right now, but it might be Senate as well. Bipartisan support that we actually expect to pass in the next few months. So, and it's going to change the cybercrime metrics concept, so you are mandatory to report, so they can figure out how much money you need.
It's fantastic.
It's
be
worth
great.
watching.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic. Help us all business-wise, but because if we don't identify the problem, it's like saying I don't go to the doctor because I don't want to know what's going on,
Right.
and then your teeth fall out, right? It's so with that, I would ask each of you an opportunity to give some closing thoughts or something that you want the audience to think about, and then we'll close the session.
No, I just you need to talk to your peers. That's pretty much the main way that we're going to be able to kind of unite together and be able to work against some of this stuff that we're seeing. So that's why events like this, they're critical, right? Because we're talking to each other.
It is great to be here. I would just say, don't forget that you can be that trusted partner for your clients, and you can help them tackle these things that they don't probably know that great of what the solution is, especially in some of public sector. There's just, we're coming from a place that's a little outdated and hasn't had the investment needs. And you know, I know it's self-interest, but you can help shape it if you do it creatively and you bring people to the table and you educate along the way. So good luck to that.
Since they took the two easy answers.
So this is
The rebel on the corner.
Yep. I would probably say know who else is in the space. And I don't mean just your competitors, but there are a ton of free resources. There are a ton of other agencies out there, especially to help public government. So know who's in that space and understand what they are providing, because honestly, with public government, you're not going to compete with free. So if there's something being provided with free, you will get so much further just by telling somebody, hey, this is free, but here's our value add. Here's why we make this service better. And there's always a way to make whatever is free better.
Thanks. Well, Stacey, Chris, Devin, thank you very much. Thank you, audience, for paying attention, and we'll be around.
Thank you guys.
So everyone, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank our panelists.